What's up, everybody? Unrested back again, and yesterday I put out a JFAQ on ways in which Japan will change you, and got the question quite a bit emailed to me after that about, well, Scott, I'm not even in Japan yet. How do I prepare for Japan? And I thought, wow, that's a great question for a JFAQ, so let's just start it out with that. This is for those of you preparing to come to Japan, or possibly just visiting Japan, or maybe just sometime in the future you dream about going to Japan and want to think of ways in which to make the trip easier for you. And there's quite a few things you can do, quite a few things I wish I had done, which I did not. I failed miserably in some tasks, mostly due to not being informed, mostly due to there not being as much information out as there is now. For example, before I came to Japan, the only J-vloggers out were Give Me a Break Man, Hiko Simon, and I think that was it. I think that's all I had to work with. So I didn't really have a lot of information. Not that they didn't put out great information at the time. It just they were the only two, so they couldn't possibly cover everything. So ways in which to prepare. Okay, so the way I personally started out was I did a lot of research on the internet. But you know what I found out later when I got here? A lot of the stuff you're going to read on the internet is actually obsolete. Check when a blog was written. Check when things were published. Check how relevant to today's time and how policies have changed in Japan, because even some of the visa laws that I read about online were already outdated. Even now, my first JFAQ has stuff about how you have to leave the country if you have your visa changed, which isn't true anymore. The visa laws have changed since I made my video, so even some of my older videos are obsolete. Check the dates of when stuff was published. Also, check the dates of when books were published that you're going to be reading about Japan. Very much so, a lot of books are outdated and obsolete. Also check, really check the authority on the topic that you're reading about as far as Japan is concerned. Check their background, because I read a lot of stuff, a lot of books about Japan before I got here. I tried to just digest as much as I possibly could. And I found out there was quite a few people who took like a 1-week trip to Japan and tried to write a book about it. Or for example, like the Lost Planet books. Lonely Planet, not Lost Planet. Lonely Planet book. It was later revealed that some of the writers for those never actually went to the countries. They merely just looked up stuff about them online and rehashed it. So not everything is even valid. I also had stuff that was just really outdated, or it was from maybe a very conservative business person who had gone on a trip here and had a totally different view of Japan. So just, I'm not saying those books are 100% worthless or anything like that, but, check the perspective of the person who's writing it and see if it would confirm the same things that you're going to do in Japan when you get here. Don't always believe everything you read 100%. Take everything with a grain of salt, and check the publication date. For example, there was one book I read, Japanese for Dummies. It must have been written by a dummy, because the Japanese that was in it was just absolutely useless. I later found out it was, number one, too overly polite. I mean, polite on a level of like, you would have to be talking to the emperor to be this polite in Japanese. It was business only, and it never even told me that. It was using Japanese only used by very, very elderly Japanese people, so me using it sounded very strange when I got here. And then I found another book when I got here that was called Dirty Japanese, just plain Dirty Japanese. And it was super relevant, it was super modern, it was up to date on everything. And the guy who had written it was actually a younger college kid who had just graduated with a master's in Japanese. And he had actually gone to Japan, stayed in Japan, studied Japanese in Japan, written a book in Japanese to pass his course, and then come back to America to write the book. And it was really, really up to date, and he really knew his stuff. I checked with the author of the other book, and it was just some guy who had asked a Japanese woman a couple questions about Japanese, and that was it. Which, I'm sure some of it was legit, but for the most part it was a pretty worthless book. So take everything with a grain of salt, and check with some other sources. As far as study books go, ones that I can at least recommend that were very helpful was Japanese for Busy People, Genki Japanese. What else? I studied, there's one that's really bad. It's called Japanese Uncensored. That book really stank. It was just, I guess the person had watched pretty much a bunch of old Yakuza and Edo era based films and just ripped Japanese from that. And I remember going through all the phrases with my wife and saying, well, when do I say this? And she's just like, no one ever says stuff like that in Japan. Like, people would just look at you like you're crazy if you said stuff like that. It's just such old words. There was other things like kanji basics are great books to pick up. People talk about the one kanji study that is memorizing the pictures in which the kanji are based around, which I think is a very good starter, but a problem that I've seen with one of those books is that it doesn't have the kana. And if you don't know what the kana is the pronunciation of the kanji, the hiragana base that it's around, and how to actually say it. If you can just look at the word and know what it means, that's great and all, but it would be a heck of a lot more helpful if you could actually say what the word is. You're gonna find it becomes not so useful if you're only just kind of knowing what picture it comes from. Moving on from there, I would say study your area. Find out what area you're gonna be put in, or you're going to be traveling in. And then go ahead and Google some of the maps for the subway system. Local subway systems, private subway systems, and the JR lines. The JR lines are the Japanese railways. They used to be government owned, now they're privately owned, but they're pretty much like your public transportation systems. They're a little bit grungy, they're not as well kept as more private subway systems, but you're probably going to use them a lot because they also are the cheapest. A lot of people ask me if they should buy a rail pass to go between Osaka and Tokyo. And that rail pass is the one that'll let you go back and forth as many times as you want. I would say no. Here's why I say no. Unless you're staying for a very long time and looking just to go back and forth over and over again, you're not going to make that trip more than once. I would be really surprised if you could handle making that trip multiple times. It is a hard trip. Yes, it's only 2 hours on a Shinkansen, but you're not overly comfortable, let's put it that way. I would be very surprised if someone could handle doing that trip quite a few times. So I would say do not buy the rail pass. My parents bought it here and they didn't use it nearly as much as they thought they would. So, let's see, moving on from there, make sure you bring deodorant, make sure you bring your toothpaste. I guess make sure you bring, enough shoes to wear. You're probably, bring good walking shoes to wear. Very comfortable walking shoes, your most comfortable walking shoes. I do not recommend Converse. I do not recommend anything with a very, very thin sole. I do not recommend anything of a very light material where it can get cold easy, or is made of rubber where it does not insulate your foot. I would say make sure you bring shoes that all fit you and don't expect to be able to buy a pair here, because anybody over a size 27 here in Japan is going to have a lot of trouble finding a shoe. That goes for clothes too if you're a rather large person, and I don't just mean in body but in height. Make sure you bring enough clothes for yourself. You might not be able to find your sizes here. Remember, an extra large here is maybe a large in America, sometimes a medium. XXL is almost non-existent. Everything's smaller. Clothes are smaller, food is smaller, think smaller, everything is smaller. Aside from that, I think I about covered just the topics top on my mind there. I'm sure there's a bunch more, and what I'd like you to do is go ahead and just write in the comments below. I'm falling behind a little bit on responding to comments because we're getting closer and closer to the Christmas season, which means I am getting busier and busier. I apologize to all of you for not answering quick enough. Your emails, your comments, your messages on Facebook. I am falling far, far behind. I will catch up when I get back from Christmas break, which is in 2 weeks. Well, my Christmas break starts in 2 weeks, and then I'm gone for a week or so. And then I'll try to catch up as much as I can. I apologize for that now, guys. Thanks for sticking with me through this. Until next time, I'm Unrested. Please like, comment, and subscribe.